Case 1. Adrien Salinas, 2013, Arizona. It was the middle of summer in Tempe, Arizona, when 19-year-old Adrien Salinas vanished without a trace. She was bright, responsible, and focused on building her future in journalism. Friends described her as the kind of person who had her entire life planned out. But one night in July 2013, that plan came to an abrupt and tragic end. That Friday night began like any other. Adrien was out with friends at a local party, celebrating the weekend. People remember her smiling, laughing, taking pictures, and drinking just another night of college fun. But as the hours passed, her mood shifted. She got into an argument with her boyfriend. It wasn't their first fight, but this time it seemed more intense. Words were exchanged, voices raised, and in frustration, Adrien left the party. Sometime after 2 a.m., she got into her car, angry and tired. Witnesses saw her drive away quickly. A few minutes later, she hit a curb and crashed near a median. Her car was damaged, but still drivable. Adrien, shaken and upset, called a cab to take her home. The driver said she was quiet during the ride, polite but distant. He dropped her off safely at her apartment around 3:30 a.m. But she didn't go inside. Instead, she crossed the street to a friend's apartment. She told him about the argument and said she didn't want to be alone. The friend told investigators later that Adrien eventually calmed down and fell asleep on his couch. At about 5 a.m., Adrien suddenly woke up, grabbed her phone and purse, and said she was leaving. Her plan, based on text messages she sent, was to meet her boyfriend nearby to talk things out. She walked out the door and disappeared into the night. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. When Adrien didn't answer her phone the next day, her family became worried. She missed a family event, which was completely out of character. By Sunday, her father, Rick Salinas, reported her missing. Police began searching immediately, but there were no clear leads. Her car remained abandoned where she had crashed it. Her phone stopped sending signals that same morning. For days, flyers spread across the city. Her friends organized searches, local news stations covered the story, and detectives followed every possible lead from her boyfriend to strangers she might have encountered. But there was no sign of Adrien. Weeks passed. The hope that she might have run away or was staying somewhere quietly began to fade. Then, 2 months later, a city worker made a grim discovery. Near a drainage ditch outside Phoenix, about 30 miles from where she was last seen, the remains of a young woman were found. Dental records confirmed it was Adrien Salinas. The body was too decomposed to determine an exact cause of death. There were no clear injuries, no evidence of assault, and no signs of a struggle. Just the mystery of how she had ended up so far from home. Investigators suggested several theories. Maybe she had been walking, dehydrated and exhausted, and accidentally drowned in a storm drain. Others believed she had been picked up by someone who offered her help and instead ended her life. Her phone and purse were never found. Adrien's family still struggles with the questions that never found answers. How did a short walk on a quiet morning lead to her death? Why did her trail end where it did? There was no goodbye message, no clue, just a young woman gone forever. Her father once said, Adrien wouldn't run away. She would have called. Something happened to her. 10 years later, that statement still defines her case, a night of normal choices, leading to a disappearance that defies explanation. Case 2. Joshua Guimond, 2002, Minnesota. November 9th, 2002. It was cold and quiet in Collegeville, Minnesota. The campus of St. John's University was nearly empty after a long night of parties. 20-year-old student Joshua Guimond had just left a friend's apartment. It was a short walk back to his dorm, less than 10 minutes. He never made it. Joshua was a pre-law student, smart, popular, and well-liked. He had plans to attend law school and dreams of making a difference in the world. That night, he attended a small gathering of friends, just drinks, laughter, and college talk. Around midnight, he got up and said he was heading home. No one noticed anything strange about his behavior. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't upset. He just left. When Joshua didn't show up the next morning, his friends assumed he'd slept in. But by evening, when no one had heard from him, alarm bells began to ring. His wallet, keys, and car were still in his room. His glasses were on the desk. He had simply walked out of that apartment and disappeared. Police began searching the area the same night. The university campus was surrounded by woods, lakes, and fields. The first theory was obvious. Maybe Joshua had fallen into one of the nearby lakes while walking back. Divers searched every inch of water. Nothing. Over time, the case grew more confusing. Investigators looked into Joshua's computer. There, they found evidence of deleted internet activity involving online chat rooms. Authorities began to suspect he might have been communicating with someone using a false identity. But despite every lead, there was no sign of him. No body, no clues, no digital trail that led anywhere useful. Years later, cadaver dogs were brought in. They reacted strongly near one of the lakes, but again, nothing was ever recovered. Joshua's parents continued to search, never giving up hope. They put up billboards, launched social media campaigns, and even hired private investigators. Every new tip brought a flicker of hope, followed by disappointment. 2 decades later, theories still swirl. Some believe he fell into the water and was never found. Others think he was abducted by someone he met online. There are even darker theories involving organized criminal activity or human trafficking. But with no physical evidence, Joshua's fate remains a mystery. In 2022, on the 20th anniversary of his disappearance, his father said, "We just want to know what happened. That's all we've ever wanted. 20 years of waiting, 20 years without a single answer." Joshua's case stands as one of the most haunting disappearances in American college history. A young man who walked a few hundred feet home and vanished into nothing. Case 3. Dean and Tina Clouse, 1980, Texas. In the early 1980s, Texas was still reeling from a wave of unsolved murders, hitchhikers, young couples, and strangers whose stories were lost to time. Among them were 2 people no one could name, a man and woman found murdered in the woods near Houston in 1981. For 40 years, their identities remained a mystery. They were simply known as the Harris County Does. It wasn't until 2021 that modern DNA testing finally revealed who they were. Dean and Tina Clouse, a young couple from Florida who had moved to Texas in search of a new beginning. The story that emerged afterward is both heartbreaking and unbelievable. Dean was just 21, Tina 19. They had a baby girl named Holly Marie. In October 1980, they told their families they were moving to Texas for Dean's new job. After that, communication stopped. Letters went unanswered. Calls were never returned. Their families assumed they had started a new life somewhere far away. Then, in January 1981, 2 bodies were discovered in a wooded area. A man had been beaten to death. A woman had been strangled. Their killer was never found. With no identification and few leads, police buried them as John and Jane Doe. Their daughter, Holly, was nowhere to be found. For decades, the Clouse family searched, never knowing if Dean and Tina were alive or dead. Then, in 2021, genetic genealogy changed everything. A DNA match identified the remains as Dean and Tina. The long-lost mystery couple finally had names. But that wasn't the end of the story. Investigators soon uncovered a shocking twist. Their missing baby, Holly, was alive. In 2022, over 40 years after her parents' murder, Holly Marie was found living in Oklahoma, safe and healthy. She had been raised by another family, unaware of her true origins. According to investigators, she was likely left at a church as a baby and adopted by a loving family. For the Clouse relatives, it was both a miracle and a tragedy to learn that their loved ones had been murdered. But their baby survived. No one knows who killed Dean and Tina or why. Some theories suggest cult involvement, as witnesses recalled seeing groups dressed in white near where the couple was last seen. Others believe they may have been victims of random violence or a planned abduction gone wrong. To this day, the case remains open. The reunion between Holly Marie and her biological family after 40 years brought international attention. It proved that technology could bring light to even the darkest corners of history, but it also left behind one haunting question. If Holly lived, who took her?